Random crits, the most fair and balanced gameplay mechanic to ever be added to any video game ever. If you don't know what random crits are, or critical hits, they're a gameplay mechanic from Team Fortress 2 where there is a very small percent chance that you will get a random critical hit which does triple damage. As an example, let's say Junkrat throws a mine into a group of people, and since that mine is a critical hit, when he blows it up, it does triple damage and insta-kills all the 200 HP characters. Sounds pretty balanced, right? Well, realistically, not really. Critical hits are criticized for being luck-based, because they are, and they are typically turned off in competitive Team Fortress 2. With that being said though, what if random crits were added to Overwatch? I mean, Overwatch has already stolen the 2 from Team Fortress 2, so I mean, why not steal more from it? Now before we start, I want to mention that I am not a part of the balance team, and instead I am a scientist. I test stuff, theoretical questions of what if, and then I add the most stupid thing you can think of into a video game. With that being said, what if random crits were added to Overwatch 2? In order to answer the question of what would happen if random crits were added to Overwatch 2, we must understand how they work. Like I have said already, critical hits will do 3 times damage to whoever you are shooting at. In particular, let's say you shoot a rocket, you can actually see a blue or red sparkle around the bullet, and then when it explodes, it will do triple damage. However, actually telling whether you're going to get a critical hit or not is actually a little more difficult than it sounds. First off, I want to mention that these are technically called critical hits, but I'm calling them random crits in this case, because in Overwatch critical hits are headshots, while in Team Fortress 2 critical hits are separate from headshots, and it's a little weird. But another reason I'm calling it random crits is simply because they are quite random. They have a base 2% chance of happening, which is quite low. However, Team Fortress 2 actually attempted to fix random crits by making it so you have a higher chance of getting them the more damage you do in the last 20 seconds. So basically, the better you're doing, the more likely you are to get a random crit, as random crits are considered tiebreakers in many scenarios. To be more exact, you actually increase your random crit chance by 1% for every 80 damage you do, and after 20 seconds that damage will go away and your critical hit chance will get lower. More damage you do, higher chance to get a critical hit, and it maxes it out at 12% I think, so if you have 800 damage stacked up in 20 seconds, you'll have the max chance of getting a critical hit. This basically means that the more damage you do, or if your character does more damage, the better of a chance you are to get random crits. This makes some characters absolutely broken, while others will stay mostly the same, but since all the other characters are getting nerfed, they'll feel kinda sucky. However, if you think I'm done explaining critical hits, you are actually wrong. Melee weapons actually have a much higher chance of critical hitting. The base chance is 15% with the highest being 60. If you've ever played Team Fortress 2 and tried to kill an engineer that's been camping your team basically, and all of a sudden he gets a random crit on his first swing, well, that's because he has a base chance of 60% if his turret's doing a lot. So basically that engineer had a guaranteed random crit. I am not going to go too in-depth with this just because it's the same thing but with melees, but something very important is what type of gun you are firing. For example, if I am using Cassidy's revolver, for every shot I do, I have a 2 to 12% chance of getting a critical hit, while if I'm firing someone like Sombra's weapon, it's a little different. Instead of each pellet detecting whether it should critical hit, every 1 second it will decide if the next 2 seconds are critical hits. That sounds a little bit confusing. In order to explain it better, imagine that you're firing Sombra's gun, right? And you get a critical hit, but it will only give you a small DPS increase and really won't do much. On top of that, because it's going to happen so often because you're firing so many bullets, you're basically guaranteed to get a random crit, and it just increases your DPS while making it more random. So TF2's solution to that is, they made it so you get a short burst of crits, so your damage is actually meaningful. This means that when you get a critical hit with Sombra's gun, rather than doing 7.5 damage per pellet, you're actually going to do something along the line of 22.5 damage per bullet, which is a lot higher, and that will last for about 2 seconds. However, this does also mean that it happens way less often than you would think. If you have a 2 to 12% chance and it checks every second, and I'm pretty sure it does every second of you firing, basically for every second you are shooting your gun, you have a 2 to 12% chance of it being a crit, and since you have to constantly reload, that means that it's not going to get very many checks in, so it's almost more likely that you're going to get a crit on single fire weapons than machine gun weapons, assuming it shoots fast enough. Obviously, if you're playing someone like Widow, you're gonna get critical hits less often, not only because you do a little bit less damage, because you're killing people, but also because your gun doesn't fire as much as you would when you're playing someone like Orisa, for example, who could just keep shooting over and over again and keep getting checks for critical hits. And that's pretty much all we need to know about critical hits. Basically, there's a 2 to 12% chance that they're going to happen. The more damage you do, the more likely you are to get them. And it works a little differently depending on what you are firing / meleeing. Now let's talk about how this would affect Overwatch. The first thing I'm going to mention is the obvious thing. Overwatch is going to become a little bit too luck-based. I want you to go back to Cassidy real quick. Now this man does about 70 damage per shot on a body shot. That means that if he gets a critical hit, he's gonna one-shot a squishy, with a squishy being a 200 health point target. That is a little broken. However, I can actually do you one better. I want you to imagine Junkrat. Let's say you have Roadhog as a tank, and this Junkrat is just shooting your tank over and over again. That means that this Junkrat, instead of having a 2% chance of critting, he's gonna have a 12%. Now he also has 5 bullets, plus a mine, or 2. So if he was to shoot all 5 of his bullets, and both his mines, the chance of him getting a critical hit is 84%. As of recording this video, Junkrat does 120 damage on a direct hit, and 110 with his mine. That means that if you multiply that by 3, he's gonna one-shot any squishy with a critical hit. And if he has an 84% chance of getting a crit after throwing 2 mines and unloading his entire clip, that would be a little broken. Now you may have noticed in the background gameplay a Junkrat popping off. This is because we figured out this pretty quickly that Junkrat would be absolutely insane with critical hits. I personally did not get critical hit by Junkrat very often, but I watched the kill feed. I saw Chris going sicko mode on Junkrat. This man was one-shotting people left and right. And on top of that, there were other characters like Reinhardt, who I think does 80 damage per swing, I'll correct it if I'm wrong. But no matter what the damage was, he was one-shotting 200 HP squishies. I actually started screaming because I was trying to contest the objective and I just got popped out of the air with a critical hit Ryan swing. Which, by the way, since that's a melee weapon, it would technically have a 15 to 60% chance of critting, which would make Reinhardt insane. Imagine having a 60% chance of one-shotting someone as Reinhardt. This even works with Fire Strike. Well, actually no, Fire Strike would be a 2 to 12. Never mind, ignore that. I guess we would also have to decide what counts as a melee and what doesn't. Like, does Briggs Whip Shot count as a melee? I don't think it does, but still, would Reinhardt's hammer count as a melee? Because then his melee damage would be absolutely insane because of random crits. We do also have to talk about what tanks you would want on your team. Reinhardt is already, like I said, pretty good right now. They kind of buffed him a lot. But something I haven't mentioned yet is barriers technically block you from doing damage. If you press tab while playing the game, or I think it's like the touchpad on PlayStation and so on, if you pull up the leaderboard and you shoot a barrier, you'll notice that your damage does not go up, which means that shooting a barrier will not increase your chance of getting a critical hit. This means that characters like Reinhardt or Winston, their barriers will be very important to deny the enemy of actually getting critical hit charge, while characters like Roadhog are just going to feed random crit charge to the enemy team. However, you know how I've been kind of negatively talking about Roadhog with random crits? Well, you may have noticed in the background that we've been playing Roadhog a decent amount, and I'll explain that later in just a minute when we talk about the actual gameplay. But just know that if you do end up trying this game mode, Roadhog can be a little broken, but like I said, I'll get into that in just a second. However, now that we know what a critical hit is, we know how much damage it does, we know the chances of it happening, and we know how it will affect the Overwatch characters, how did it do in testing? Like I've already foreshadowed, Junkrat was a bit insane, Reinhardt was also quite good, and like I just said, Roadhog was a little broken, but that was completely because we didn't code it correctly. As of right now, we have random critical hit version 1. Now, version 1 has this big flaw. You know how I said the automatic weapons will check for a critical hit every 1 second for 2 seconds? Well, we just straight up did not add that. We also did not add the melee weapon thing, but that's just because it's not as entertaining in Overwatch. The melees are pretty basic, and most of them are not special. The only ones that are, I'm pretty sure, are Reinhardt and Brig, which it would be absolutely broken to have a Reinhardt with a 60% melee rate, so we just didn't add it for testing purposes. As for the automatic weapon, the reason we didn't add it was simply because we were having trouble with it. However, just for testing purposes, we decided to play with only this single shot random critical hit. So characters like Sombra, like I said, if instead of doing 7.5 damage per second, she's going to do a little bit more than that because she's going to get a critical hit every roughly 25 bullets or something. However, we mostly focused our attention on the characters that could potentially one-shot with a critical hit, or could almost kill someone with a critical hit, like Ashe, Cassidy, Junkrat, Reinhardt, and you may have noticed Roadhog. Now Roadhog, of course, can probably one-shot if he gets a critical hit. There's only one problem. He shoots like 25 pellets out at once, and since they are a projectile, they each count as a different damage source. That means that when you shoot it, each pellet detects if that pellet should be a critical hit. Now that sounds like a net nerf. If Roadhog shoots out 25 pellets and they each do 6 damage per pellet, that will be 150 damage on a body shot. With that being said, there is a 2 to 12% chance that one of those pellets will get a critical hit. So if you think about that, the more damage you have, also known as the higher rate of a critical hit you have, you can technically just straight up increase your DPS. So if there is a 12% chance that one of the pellets is going to be a critical hit, and you detect that for every single pellet that comes out of his gun, let's just say that 12% of the bullets happen to be critical hits, which is roughly 5 bullets. Suddenly, 6 of those bullets are going to be critical hits, which is going to be 6 times 3, 6, 12, 18. You multiply that by 5. 18 times 5 is about 90 damage. And then if you add the other 20 pellets, which are 6 damage each, that's going to be 120 plus 90, which equals 210, which means we accidentally, assuming he gets at least 5 critical hits on the pellets, we brought back Roadhog's one shot. Accidentally, of course. And that is why Roadhog was played so much, was because he suddenly could one-shot people again with the slight DPS increase. Now, if we were to actually add this, this would not happen. Why, you may say, would this not happen? Well, in version 2, which we are working on, or at least I've started working on. Also, I forgot to mention I got help with this video. Super Slime actually helped me code this. We sat in a workshop for about an hour or two and just coded it. Say thanks to him for doing most of the coding because I just kind of sat there and did the math while he actually did the coding. But with that being said, in version 2, we're going to make it so every second it detects if you have a critical hit, which means that by technicality, if you get 2 seconds of critical hits on Junkrat, you're actually going to do a stream of critical hits. Because Junkrat, I think, shoots 2 or 3 bullets out in 2 seconds. So that means he's going to have a stream of critical hits. However, since it's going to work on characters like Roadhog, he's going to suddenly not one-shot every character, so I think it's a needed fix. Also, what we can do is instead of having that for every character, we can leave what we've coded on the single-shot characters, and then add the 1 second one on characters that need it, like Roadhog or Sombra or Tracer or etc. The only time this becomes a problem is characters that have both automatic and semi-weapons. For example, Ramatra, his automatic fire is his main primary weapon where he shoots a bunch of bullets out, and then his semi is when he is punching people. In that case, we will probably just leave on automatic because having 2 critical hits in a row is fine, I guess. It would probably be broken because he could melt a tank. Basically what I'm saying here is if you try the code on screen, that's version 1, where it only will do 3 times per damage you do. So automatic weapons will not do a stream of critical hits and will just do like random critical hit per bullet. Basically, it's not going to do anything impactful. Unless, of course, you're playing Roadhog, then you bring the one-shot back, and that causes problems. And in version 2, we're going to try and fix that. However, that's pretty much how it would affect Overwatch. I could go in depth with every single interaction in the game, but I'm sure people would get bored with that, as I already talked about all 37 characters in a video most of the time, and that ends up being like 30 to 40 minutes, so I'll save you guys the talking this time, and just leave you with this. Random crits are fair and balanced, and in Overwatch, when you get a random crit, you basically lose the fight for free. Yeah, random crits in Overwatch would not work super well. Like I said, just imagine a Cassidy firing a body shot into one of your supports and then just instantly killing them. That would kinda suck. One-shots are already getting complained about, and I'm pretty sure Widow and Hanzo are getting nerfed next season. I honestly don't even keep up with the balance patches anymore, but I'm pretty sure people don't like random crits. However, I have a solution to that. Let's make more characters broken, but make the game 12 versus 12, just like Team Fortress 2. I think that would solve all our problems, especially with no limits when there could be 24 Hanzos in the game, and we can just shoot 24 dragons. I'm sure that would cause no issues at all. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe. This is a little bit different than what I normally do, but I really wanted to try it, and I like talking about this stuff. I just don't really know what to talk about. I'm thinking about doing an Overwatch documentary for each hero, but like I said, I kind of get information wrong sometimes. So if we have any nerds who would want to help, feel free to join my Discord. Unlike last videos, I will not be turning people into my Discord kittens. I have actually gotten way too many requests for that, and I've also been sent Sonic feet pics because of the feet video. So I'm gonna stop promising stuff and just say if you're a nerd and want to help with videos, feel free to join the Discord. Anyways, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.